What's up everyone, Darcblade here with a Dino Hunting Guide to Exoprimal. In this video I'm going to be showing you and giving you an overview of all the exosuits in the game. So let's get into this. First of all is the Deadeye, one of the basic assault exosuits in the game. It's basically the default boy I like to refer to it as. It's the one you start with, the one that's kind of shown in trailers and all that good stuff. When you start off as the Deadeye, you'll have access to the following abilities. First of all, for pressing R2, you will just simply fire your gun. Accuracy goes out the window a little bit the further you are away from dinosaurs, but the closer you are, a little bit better. You can also press L2 as well with this gun to increase accuracy and aim down sights. Next up, you have access to the rifle grenade, which is done by aiming L2 and then pressing R1. Pushes enemies back and deals quite a bit of explosive damage. Next up, you have your basic ability to avoid enemy attacks or dinosaur attacks, which is a simple roll known as the dive dodge. This is done by pressing L1 in the case of the PlayStation. This does unfortunately have a little bit of a cooldown, but it can be adjusted with builds and such. Next up is known as the thrust attack. This is your keep away melee attack. When in range of an opponent, you can press down R1 and give an enemy a punch. This can actually be held and charged up as well for more damage. I believe as well that increases range and impact charging it up. Like so. And then finally, for the Deadeye, you have access to its overdrive or ultimate ability known as the cluster salvo. I believe that's what it's called. Yeah, cluster salvo, which is done by pressing your overdrive ability triangle and circle in the case of the PlayStation, and puts you into a mode where you just all guns are blazing until it runs out. Real big DPS move, basically. This class is all about dealing damage anyway. So, you know, you're going to be using it as... This is going to be one of the... I know it is basic, and comparing it to sort of like maybe Soldier 76 could be something, but... or if you played... if anyone is here from the Mass Effect days, you know, comparing it to the other Soldier classes in the Mass Effect multiplayer could be considered another way of looking at it. And so that is the Deadeye. Let's move on to the next exosuit, which again is another DPS one. By the way, you can change exosuits in the middle of a mission. You don't actually have to go back to camp or choose or lock in your exosuit before the mission starts. You can choose what you want. So, for example, you got fed up playing, you know, Deadeye, and you want to switch to the Zephyr class, which is another DPS class that specializes in melee. This is a melee exosuit. So, you jump out your exosuit, you're in vulnerable human form, which you can still do damage with. It's not very good, but you can still do damage with. And when you're ready, you would do your overdrive button again and summon in your next exosuit. By the way, this Zephyr looks different because I did actually unlock something for it. And also ignore the giant big gun on the back. The big gun is to do with the rig, but we'll talk about that later. Now, the Zephyr class. Basically, you don't have a gun. You are a melee DPS class here. Think of yourself almost like a rogue, or in some respects like, yeah, a rogue or a brawler. Holding, for example, pressing R2 allows you to perform a melee combo, and it does have a little bit of range. It does have a little bit of range to it, so you don't have to actually get right up and close and personal with some of the bigger dinosaurs. So you can, you know, like I'm damaging this at range here. I think you do more damage if you actually go up and melee them, but that is the basic attack done with R2 instead of like shooting. You also have access to your linear strike, which is basically a tackle that sends enemies flying. If they go into walls or additional enemies, it deals more damage to them. So, you know, it's the Exosuit's ability for crowd control, basically. Like the grenade in some respects. To push enemies away if they're getting too close or there's too many on you. You know, you do this and knock a majority of enemies away. But anyway, next up is the evasion ability known as the Turbine Step. This is a very quick... It's almost like the Demon Dash from the Dual Blades in Monster Hunter. Pressing L1 allows you to dash out the way quickly from target to target if need be. You can do it up to 2 times, at least by default. You may be able to do it more when, you know, once builds start coming into play. So you have 2 charges with it. You can do it up to twice. Say you're in traversal or something like that, you can do it up to 2 times. Yeah, to do it quickly. Anyway, yes, you then have access to the Sky High move. Now this is, I don't know how I would categorize it. It is sort of a crowd control move, but it's also a high damaging move. Basically, it allows you to kick an opponent into the air, after which you can kind of sky combo them. So it offers a little bit of crowd control, leaving an enemy vulnerable, whilst you can deal some damage to it. So, I mean, you can, I believe, combo them into other moves. For example, hang on a minute, let me just test this. So can you do this into this? Oh, no, wrong button. Ignore that. So you would be able to Sky High them into linear strike, potentially. So, like so. So you can combo the moves into one another. So this is one of the... This is... For players who love their brawlers and fighters, this may be the class for you. The only trouble is, as a DPS class, you're a little bit flimsy. Why did that... Okay, it takes a while for them to spawn in. Anyway, the overcharge ability, though, is known as the limiter override. When activating this, basically, all the cooldown timers are reduced, so you can allow for faster combos, and it allows you to heal whilst you're actually in the mode. So it's like a, you know, massive DPS boost. Hang on a minute, everyone. Ignore that. Whoever that was can... Yep. Yeah, ignore that, chat. Ignore that. So anyway, like I said, you got the limiter override. It basically removes a lot of the cooldowns on your abilities and so on and so forth, and whilst providing you healing at the same time. So hi, Mark. Hi, Mark. So you can perform them really quickly. Yeah, it is interesting to see what combos people are going to be able to come up with when the move is active. Oops, other side of the fence, buddy. So yeah. Lot of potential with this class, but it seems like it may be one of the risque classes to use, and potentially one of the squishiest classes out of the DPS category. Okay, break. I was going to say chat. Hey, I was going to say hey to everyone who's in chat at the moment. Quick, just update. I'm going to be cutting this out of the video. I'm recording a live video, so I can't address chat too much at the moment. I hope everyone's doing well, and let's get back into it. Yeah, that's why we need good healers, or you bring the rig that allows you to heal yourself. The only trouble is it's only here for a short amount of time, doesn't heal much, and disappears pretty quickly. Oh, I'll talk about the rigs in a moment. Anyway, let's move on to the next exosuit, or the class, known as the Barrage. This is basically, for lack of a better word and way of describing it, it's Junkrat in Exosuit form. So it's all about explosions and AoE damage. So let's bring out Barrage. Right. Wrong button. I'll explain that in a minute. Right, okay. Skipper Bomb is the main move of the Barrage. It's basically Junkrat's grenade launcher. Oh my god. It's Junkrat's grenade launcher. 2 seconds. Okay, it's Junkrat's grenade launcher. Oh, wrong button again. I keep going to aim down sights. That's something you're going to have to learn not to do with some of the other classes, because even though the first one can aim down sights, and one or two of the exosuits can do it at the moment. Go on. Yeah, even though a few of the other classes can aim down sights, there's a lot who don't, and the aim down sights buttons are used for other abilities, which, to be honest, are normally on longer cooldowns, and you don't want to waste them. But anyway, basic grenade launcher, also known as the skip bomber, is the R2 ability. For L2, which was what I was doing for aiming down sights, it's known as the triple threat. Basically, this is a two-pronged move. You jump into the air and you fire down 3 mines. They can stick to opponents and they can stick into dinosaurs. Once you've fired 1, you press L2 again and they'll detonate. They also leave fire damage over, which ticks over time. So it's a nice little move. You then have the dodge flip, which is the exosuit's ability to evade and such. Basically, this allows the Barrage to fire an explosive that also causes it to dodge out of the way. You can aim which direction it goes in as well. It also does a little bit of knockback and tiny bit of damage. Next up is the stun grenade, which, to be honest, is purely crowd control. You just throw it at an opponent, voila, stun grenade, and they're stunned for a little while. And yeah, so and then finally is burning heat, which is the overdrive mode, which basically turns you into the Human Torch from Fantastic Four. And that is the Barrage. Lots of AoE damage potential, I will say, with this class. And to be honest, when it comes to the waves, the big waves, I think this class is going to excel, but it may struggle against the single target stuff. Okay, let's move on to the next exosuit, which is the final DPS, or the current final DPS exosuit, which, to be honest, at the moment out of this bunch is currently my favorite, known as Vigilant. It's probably the first female exosuit, because the exosuits are divided into feminine and masculine exosuits. So anyway, Vigilant is... Anyone who's played Widowmaker will probably understand this character. But that being said, unlike Widowmaker, I believe Vigilant plays better. Yes, there are similarities to Warframe as well. That could be a good example. For all the exosuits, to be fair. And anyway, for Vigilant, you have access first to the Supersonic Burst, which is basically a 3-round pulse rifle kind of... Burst rifle, sorry. Pulse rifle's destiny. You know, kind of nice and simple. You also can aim down sights and magnify by holding L2 and press it in L3. This will allow you to aim down sights and obviously snipe. Really good at single target damage, which against the T-Rex, you know, the Triceratops, the bigger dinosaurs, the better. You'll also notice that the bullets can pierce through enemies, and headshots do count. So we should be able to kill both of those at once. Now the thing is, you'll notice when charging, you'll see a little power gauge on the right and left side of your aim reticule. When you aim down sights, you'll see them quickly fill up. You want to always try to fire your weapon when it's at full power. Otherwise the shots, you can fire them, you know, but they hardly do any damage or range. Anyway. So that's the basics of the sniper. You also have access to, your mobility move is a little bit weird, but it's supposed to help the class get to high vantage points, because this is the only class currently with a proper double jump. Other classes can have a double jump with the rig gear, but this one gets it kind of naturally. So it's traversal tool. The next ability is the Frost Lock, which is done by pressing L1. This allows you to... Wrong button! Ignore that, I'll get to that in a minute. Right, you fire an ice cube. But, if you shoot the ice cube, it... oh god, I missed. If you hit the ice cube, it explodes, damaging and freezing opponents around it. I believe you can also directly hit with the ice cube as well, but there you go. You can directly hit with the ice cube, and it would just do damage, and then you should be able to shoot it again. So that's that's the Vigilance crowd controlling ability. Now you also have access to the Stinger Shot done with R1, which is basically turns the it initiates the railgun functionality of the weapon. And so deals big damage, basically. It's kind of like your big damage move. It can also pierce through enemies as well, although it may be hard to demonstrate with these bunch of bozos moving back and forward, especially with the timing. So hang on, let me see if I can... Yeah, it's a bit hard with the timing, but to be honest, the damage on its own of the railgun is why you want to be using it. I mean, actually, hang on. Can the... Hang on a minute. Just out of interest, I want to see if the railgun can actually crit. It doesn't look like the railgun can crit. Okay, maybe the railgun is more designed to deal with crowds of enemies. Oh, actually, hang on a minute. I believe, let me just try something. I believe if you fire at the floor, it also hits enemies. If, hang on. I'm waiting for the cooldown here, guys. Bear with us, chat. I mean, you can do it airborne as well, so, you know, you can... Okay, it doesn't have an explosion, so it is just a piercing move to deal damage to multiple opponents. When I was playing a few matches with it, it was the move that I tended to rely on to guarantee big damage against the bigger monsters, rather than relying on my sniper shots, which would take longer to charge up and such. Anyway. We'll move on to the final move, the Overdrive, the Barrel Breaker, which basically allows all your sniper shots to be full power, without any charging time or anything. So you would activate it, and you'll see when we zoom in, the power meter is yellow. So we're doing maximum damage with our shots all the time. You can see also a little gauge next to the right of the reticule, which indicates how much power we had left. We've run out now. Which indicates how much power we had left on the barrel breaker mode. So you can see it's max at the moment, and it's slowly ticking down. So, you know, you can potentially save this if you wanted to. But yeah, that's basically the vigilant, the sniper DPS of the crew. Unlike Junkrat, this class is much better suited for taking down the large single targets. In one of the matches I was doing, we were really struggling and behind the opponent's team time by quite a bit when I was using this class. But as soon as we got to the last 2 missions where we had to take on the bigger dinosaurs, because of this class's ability to dish out that single target damage very effectively, we were able to bring down those big monsters far much quicker than the other team, who obviously had more exosuits that were specialized in dealing with the weaker foes, but lots of them. But anyway, let's move on to the next exosuit, shall we? Which is, we're going into the first of the tanks. Obviously, tanks are designed to have the most health pools, especially when compared to the assault and the support. They are the heaviest armor, but they are the slowest. But they shouldn't be discounted for DPS. Yes, you can. You can change your suit mid-game by simply pressing the touchpad on the PlayStation controller, and it brings up the menu, and you would select whatever new one you want. Or if you wanted to change your rig as well, you could change your rig that way. And then once you're ready, you press OK or triangle, whatever button it is for you, and you'll jump out of your exosuit into human form. You can still do damage in human form, but it's not advised. And then you can, with the override ability, triangle and square in the case of the PlayStation, you can summon in the new exosuit you selected. So next up is Roadblock, the first of the tank exosuits. Now, this is a melee tank. It is not a ranged tank. So, for its R2 ability, instead of shooting a gun, it will just straight up punch opponents and dinosaurs. So, you know, dinosaurs, punch them. The fact that its fist turns into a massive flipping power fist is actually quite hilarious, I find. But this is its kind of default damage dealing mode. We can punch dinosaurs. 2023 be wild. Anyway, that's how you punch. I should go over to the damage training area for this one. Right. So you then have access to your shield, which is done by pressing L2. Basically, if anyone's played Reinhardt, you know what to expect here. You have your shield percentage at the top. That will go down after you take a number of hits. By the way, dinosaurs can't penetrate past this shield either. Dropping the shield obviously allows it to recharge. But your shield also, if you press R2, your melee button whilst your shield is up, you can push back opponents. Unfortunately, there is a little bit of cooldown. When the shield breaks, you have to wait for it to come off cooldown. So that's how the shield works. Nice and simple. Hang on, let's just give myself a second. Your next ability is the skip dodge. Basically, this is the Roadblock's class dodge capabilities, which, you know, given it's a heavy beefy boy, is a little bit slow. But then again, I think you probably only rely on the dodge when, you know, your shield's off cooldown and such. It's fine, it's fine. You can use your left stick whilst pressing L1 to perform the skip dodge to change which direction you want to dodge in, all that good stuff. You then also have access to your taunt done with R2, which again has multiple charges like the dodge of the Zephyr. You can basically taunt, and enemies in your location will come to you. You'll see the purple on their backs, means that they're focused on you. Your idea is obviously protect your weaker allies. Whilst although these are dummies, I don't know if they're actually going to shoot me. But that's the idea of it. You're supposed to use taunt, protect your weaker allies, pull up your shield. When you get a chance, deal some damage with your fists or your shield bash. Dodge out the way as well with your little hop if need be. Anyway, let's go away from the damage area a second and go show off the overdrive ability. Now, the overdrive ability is Storm Drive, which generates a tornado that sucks, basically crowd controls enemies to it. Basically, and then whilst doing this, you can press R2. I don't know if I actually did that correctly. I think I ran out of time. That's what happens when the tornado sort of like runs out naturally. But if you press R2 whilst the tornado is in effect, you can send it off. So lots of crowd control and survival capabilities with the roadblock. So I believe every team for maximum effectiveness is going to want to have, at least one tank and one support. I don't think everyone can be TPS and be successful, shall we say. But then again, that's what these squad-based games and RPG sort of like parties are all about. But anyway, let's move on to the next tank class, which is the Krieger. I believe this will make some players happy, especially if you like the heavy bowgun. By the way, ignore the skin I got for it. Ignore the skin I've got for it. This is from the Battle Pass thing. Right, okay. Krieger. Right. Krieger, at the moment, he has access to the K40 repulsor minigun. Done by pressing R2. Which doesn't have ammo. It has a heat gauge as well, so you can just keep on firing until the cows come home. You can also press square as well to manually cool down the weapon if you don't want to wait for it to cool down naturally. But yeah, that's its main source of dealing damage. You also have access to the missile, the Stunlock missile that fires homing missiles that can paralyze enemies. This is done by holding L2. So you can hold L2, it locks onto all the enemies around you that are within range, release, and missiles fire away. They stun opponents if they hit, nice bit of crowd control and damage. You then have access to this Exosuit's dodging capability with L1, known as the thrust dash. So depending on what direction you're pressing, you press L1, and you do a big kind of dodge out the way. It takes a little while to charge up, and there is a little bit of an animation cooldown, but it can get you out of the way of trouble if need be. But then again, the tanks aren't really always about mobility, they're about health and survival. If you notice the health pools down in the bottom left over the course of this video, you'll notice that some of the classes have a lot more health, like the Deadeye, the basic default damage dealing Exosuit, had like 350 health, I believe. Or was that the Zephyr? Anyway, whilst the Krieger has obviously 900 health. Anyway, next up you have this class's the Krieger's defensive ability, which is known as the Dome Shield. This deploys basically a massive dome around you and your allies that will repel smaller dinosaurs, but the larger ones will be able to pass through it, I believe. But when doing so, when the shield breaks, they will be stunned. So I believe when the large dinosaurs run into it, the shield breaks and it will stun the large ones. So enemy fire probably won't be able to penetrate this, as it's classed as small arms fire. So it's like putting a barrier up around you and your team to deal damage protection that way. So, and anyway, let's move on to the overdrive. which I'm going to butcher the name of how to pronounce because I the Toadster regen. Oh god, I can't speak. Todesreen. Anyway, the overdrive ability, which basically allows you to summon a pinpoint laser, to which afterwards you press R2 to activate, and oh, my thing's on. There we go. Right. So you point it there, and then it just causes a cluster bombs to fall down, to rain down. Todes regen. Todes regen? The thing is, you can press, like at the moment I'm holding down the missiles to lock on, whilst actually firing off my, other abilities and, that sort of good stuff. You can combo the moves together if you wanted to. Especially with some classes over others. So anyway, that is the Krieger. Let's move on to the final tank class, which to be honest is one of my contenders for favourite class in the game at the moment. The Marusame. Anyway, let's move on to the Murasame, which, like I said, is probably going to be, well, the contender for my favourite class in the game. There's one more that may top it in the support. Anyway, Marusame. This is, again, another melee tank. So there's only one ranged tank in the game. The other two are melee tanks. But, this class is, I think it may excite longsword fans. Anyway, the Kiri Ichimonji is its main ability, which is just a basic melee attack. Melee combo, deals okay damage. It's not greatest. It probably won't out damage a DPS class necessarily. But it's a nice straightforward combo that you can just combo, keep performing over and over again. I believe it does hit multiple opponents if they're all bunched up together as well. Okay, next up is the Crescent Moon, which basically is this class's taunting mechanic. When you press L2, you'll sheathe your weapon into a special sheath, after which unleash it and you'll hit opponents around you, after which this move will taunt them, getting them to attack you. They will attack you. Like I said, it's the taunt move of the class. You then have access to the strafe hook, which is a combination of damage dealing and traversal, which is done by pressing L1. You fire off the rope and it allows you to fly forward, after which you'll have access to two more abilities. When flying through the sky, you can either press R2 to deal damage to opponents, or you can press X to add more height to your jump. So, if you were to press X, you could be able to perform a jump afterwards. Sorry about the cooldown on the ability. It does have a little bit of a long cooldown, so it's not a move you can just kind of constantly perform over and over again. But that's the R2 after performing it. It would cause a shockwave around you. So I guess in some respects it could be considered a little bit of a crowd control capability for the Murasame's kind of arsenal, and you can combo them in to get one another. So you can jump afterwards and slam down onto the ground. I believe I need to double check something. I wonder if you can. Yeah, you can use it to traverse and go, really high for airborne things and such. And you can also, you can attack with your weapon in midair, if you're facing pteranodons or something like that. Anyway, next up is the Vajra counter. Anyway, it's basically this class's ability to hang on a minute. I think it would be better if I show you in the other area a second. Ow. Which, basically, is you put yourself into a stance where you block enemies' attacks. Right, let them go back. So you put yourself into a stance where you block incoming attacks. Like so. Now, you'll notice some aspects about this. One, you can't hold it indefinitely. And two, you'll notice that there's various hexagon patterns around you. Now, these will fill up as dinosaurs deal damage to you. When all the hexagons fill up, then you'll get the ability to perform a counter attack with R2, which will send all the dinosaurs around you flying. I believe not the bigger ones. See, the hexagons are filling up. Oh, I ran out of time. Right, ignore that. Right, just there would be dinosaurs. You weren't good enough dinosaurs to actually trigger my counter. Did it at the start, but not... Right, okay, now do it. Right, come on, hit me, hit me, hit me, hit me! There we go, and we counter and we do massive big damage. Which, to be honest, for me is the main selling point and why I like this class. Trying to absorb the damage with that counter and then performing the big uppercut afterwards is really nice. So let me just do a demonstration of it again. So normally it would be a case of going in there, performing your taunt slice, going into your counter ability straight away, and then rinse and repeat. That's normally the rotation you would do with this class. And then you have access to the overdrive mode, the Meikyo Shishui. Oh god, I can't do Japanese unless it's Duolingo. Meikyo Shishui. Shisui. Yeah, Meikyo Shisui. Anyway. It's a DPS related ult that basically allows you to charge up the ult, and you'll see more patterns, more squares, or well, they're kind of diamonds. They cascadingly form on one another, and that indicates the distance at which your move is going to go. So like at the start when you first perform the move, it's going to be like maybe 1 diamond, 2, and if you hold it, well, just let the ability charge up. After activating it, you can, get it further. You can activate it to go further. The thing is, you can activate it earlier if you don't want it to go as far by pressing R2 after performing it, like so. So we got 1, 2, 3. Right, it only hit like maybe the first one if he didn't move out the way. But normally, so 1, 2, 3. Only hit the first one, didn't hit the third or the second one. So let's do it here and we'll see if we can hit all 3 of them. 1, 2, 3, 4. And they all flipping happen to move out the way at the same time. Oh, good demonstration. 1. Well, it probably would have hit the third one as well, if they weren't flipping moving back and forth. Anyway, let's see if we can hit all 3 of them again. No, they moved back and forth too much. So anyway, that's the concept of the class. Obviously, the special sheave into your taunt, followed by your absorption counter, is the sort of like main rotation, like I said. The thing is, the counter isn't instant. It's not like the Sword and Shield's Metsuguke move, for example. You actually have to let it charge up first before you can go into it. you have to let it charge up by taking enough hits. Otherwise, you'll just sit there in that counter stance before it wears off. Let's see if we're gonna like it. So I didn't build enough charge. You can't do anything. You just end up standing there like a little bit of a test dummy. Yeah, that's the point. Yeah, you are right. The enemies appear red if they're within the range of the ultimate there. That's actually a good point. Something I didn't know. Anyway, let's move on to the next set of classes where we talk about the supports. Now, first of all is the Witch Doctor. Basically, supports are normally lower on the damage scale. They are normally as well quite fragile, but they have the ability to have a unique movement and the ability to heal your allies. So, let's bring out the Witch Doctor. These are always the quirky classes as well. These are hang on, we've got to go over here because if we're healing, we actually got to show off that we're healing our allies. So anyway, the Witch Doctor. First move is the Neuro Rod. Basically, this unleashes basically it's like a little taser, for lack of a better word. You run up to enemies and you can kind of sift lightning them. It doesn't really do that much damage. I mean, it's doing some damage, but it can also paralyze dinosaurs. Fortunately, it does have a little bit of cooldown, much like the sort of like heat gate. Well, it's a percentage sort of like cooldown. You see the battery in the bottom right of the screen, sorry. So it's really good. It's nice at close range, put it that way. Anyway, that's the Neuro Rod. You then have access to the feed, which is done by pressing L2. Your Neuro Rod, by the way, was done by pressing R2. I assume when I say the controls, you can see the controls at the top of the screen here when I'm showing off this information. But yeah, basically the Neuro Mod allows you to attach a feed to your allies and heal them. You have 2 charges of it before it goes on cooldown, so use them wisely. Oops, too slow. And again. It is limited in range as well because it's actually a physical thing that comes out of the Witch Doctor and attaches itself to allies. And that's its main healing mechanic. You then have access to the Rescue Leap, which basically is the Witch Doctor's dodge ability, done with L1. Which is really long, put it that way, and you can do it twice. And I believe you can kind of send yourself into sort of like action to heal yourself, like heal your allies and things like that. By the way, the move I did here, the circle, we'll talk about in a moment. Right, bear with me. You can also hold down X whilst jumping to float with the support classes. Well, not all of the support classes, but at least 2 of them. You can float with the support classes by pressing X to jump, or your jump button, and then holding that jump button again. Anyway, you then have access to the repair field, which was that big green circle I showed you earlier. Basically, massive healing field. Heals allies within its range. Nice and simple. Great ability. Massive range. Probably one of the best classes at AoE healing, this one. Obviously you have your single target heal as well, but the repair field is kind of where it's at. Yeah, which brings us on to the overdrive overdrive mode, Vital Aura, which basically it releases a huge condensed kind of restorative, well, you'll see in a moment. It basically restores health to allies, limits nearby opponents' movement speed, and also I believe it boosts your allies' defense as well. So allies will be healed within it when you activate it. It's not healed over time, it's when you activate it. And you get a little bit of defense boost, and if there are dinosaurs around, then they would obviously be slowed. And let's see how much kind of it can heal for, if I can time it right. It's a full heal, basically. On the dummy there, we did a full heal on it. And so, yeah, that's the Witch Doctor class. I called the Witch Doctor. Okay, anyway, right, let's get back to it. Okay, we're moving on to the next support class, which is the Skywave. Basically, this is the most airborne of the exosuits. Also, I think magic users are going to approve of this one. Let's change that again. Just for consistency. Right. The Skywave. It has access to the Aether Lance, which is done by pressing R2. Which fires off a little burst with your little wand, well, staff. It will damage opponents it hits and heal allies it hits. It also has a small little AoE around it. So, it's kind of nice. Kind of a it's the class's simple R2 ability to heal. You also don't actually have to hit the enemies directly. You can hit the floor if you're bad with aiming. Anyway, you then also have access to a float when you jump. Jump with X, hold it again afterwards, and your wings come out. But that's not what's best about this class. We're going to get onto the other moves. Next up is Optics Jammer. By pressing L2, you'll fire a shockwave that blinds enemies and heals allies. A bit like a shotgun blast. Well, it's actually quite a long-range shockwave blast that you can use to heal allies it goes through and blind enemies. You then have access to the Slipstream, which is one of the quirky aspects of this class, shall we say. It's basically, with L1, you have 2 charges, but it allows you to become airborne. And you will stay floating for a while. You will slowly descend, but normally you are able to press it again by the time you hit the floor to go back up. You can also use it twice if you wanted to, and then you just rain down healing or damage on opponents. Don't think that would actually hit. The range of your shockwave, your Optics Jammer, won't unfortunately hit unless you're closer to the ground. But you'll notice that your movement whilst airborne is a little bit restricted. You don't really can't kind of air dodge like a insect glaive or anything like that. You are quite slow whilst in the air, so if you are, well, put it this way, you're safe from dinosaurs, except for pteranodons. But if you did go into the exo PvP side of things, you know, the pure PvP, the combat on combat, exosuit on exosuit, then you may have difficulties, shall we say. But nonetheless, this is one of the unique aspects about this class. And, you know, if you just want to come down, you can just press X and you drop to the ground. So, anyway, next up is Graviton Cage. This fires a gravity cluster that pulls surrounding enemies to it. So it's basically it sucks in enemies around them, stopping them from moving too much. So basically it kind of, in some respects, can be used to aid in this class's ability to deal damage, or the teammates' class ability, because basically one of the issues is your projectiles are quite slow when compared to some of the other classes out there. So sometimes, you know, fast moving dinosaurs can move out the way. So say you go airborne, yada yada yada, we'll fire down that, and then they'll stop moving so much, and then we can actually, you know, hit them more consistently. Anyway, let's move on to the final move, which is the Overdrive, the Desynchronize. Basically, this undoes your gravity controls, limiting your limiters to generate a gravity well. Wraps opponents in a slow space-time, briefly stopping all movement in the area. So basically, it is a huge crowd control Doesn't deal damage, but it, this is what the support classes are about. They're not necessarily about dealing damage to monsters, dinosaurs. They are about helping your team, healing your team, and crowd control. But that is Skywave. Let's move on to the final class, which, to be honest, at the time of this video, is my joint favorite, called the Nimbus. Au revoir. Yeah, by the way, Skywave is kind of like got that French kind of thing going on. Anyway, Nimbus is joint favorite. If you can tell, she is a skater girl. Right, now, waifu mode, I could probably talk about this one without going even looking at the details of the names and that, because I've played this one the most. Basically, anyway, she has basically access to 2 modes, Mars and Apollo, the 2 names of her weapons. But it's not, basically pressing R2, pressing R2 will allow you to fire your dual pistols. She is very mobile, put it that way. For support, she is probably the most mobile. I was gonna say, chat. Don't worry about the knee socks. They kind of that was part of the. That's a skin. That's not the default. That's not the default. Anyway, yeah. Basically, R2 is to fire your guns. Hang on, I need to go over here to the healing dummies to show off how the healing works for this support class. Now. You also have access to Mode Switch, which turns Mars and Apollo from damage-dealing weapons to healing weapons. So you can shoot your allies with them, but they won't do any damage to your opponents anymore. They will just heal your allies. So what is a case of mode switching between the character to what the situation needs. There is a cooldown between switching between modes. Too slow. So anyway, that's the basics of her basic weapons. You know, switch L2 to switch modes, R2 to fire whatever mode you're in. One for damage, one for healing. But what else do you have? You have access to the Hollow Warp. This is the Nimbus's class evasion capabilities, although it does have other aspects as well. Basically, it projects a hologram of herself forward that will heal nearby allies when you warp to it. So basically, you would fire it off with L1. You see, it does eventually disappear. Now we got to wait for cooldown a second. Bear with us. Bear with me. When the when the hologram passes, when the hollow warp passes through allies, it doesn't heal them itself. You have to teleport again to the dummy's location with L2 again. So let me see if I can get it on the middle one. Okay, you send it off, teleport, and it heals in an AoE around you. You can also use that to traverse the map as well. You could use it in more of an offensive way as well. So say we're in DPS mode, we want to go over to this bozo over here, we send it off, yada yada yada, bing! Yeah. So anyway, next up is Spread Shot. Basically, this allows you to, depending on what mode you're in, this allows you to either heal allies or deal damage to enemies. So if we use it with R1, it gives you a short burst of dealing a nice amount of healing to your allies, or if you were to use it against an opponent, it gives you a little burst of extra damage to deal against opponents. You know, it's kind of simple. Looks cool though. Okay, and then finally is the overdrive, known as the antipode burst, which basically allows you to send forth a shockwave that will heal allies and damage enemies. It also pushes back enemies, I believe. So you do that, hold it like that, and then when you're ready, you press fire with R2, and it fires and heals them nicely. Let me just see how much damage this does, because I can't remember. I believe it does damage. I believe it's not just to push enemies back. I don't think it does that much damage, because it's obviously a support character. So, there you go. And yes, so that is the Nimbus class. But before we finish off the classes, let's quickly talk about the rigs. Now, rigs, shown down here at the bottom, are equipment that can be used on any exosuit. They are normally found located to your shoulder, like so. Each rig has gives you some access to an ability, or maybe a utility, or a tool basically that could maybe fill in the gaps to where your class lacks. So hypothetically, say you're using Roadblock, who doesn't have any ranged capabilities really. It could make use of the cannon rig to kind of supplement itself for that and kind of fill in the gaps. And because the cannon, basically, by pressing triangle, it gives you access to a railgun. It does have a little bit of a cooldown, but it kind of fills in that gap a little bit. I mean, ranged classes like the sniper class, basically the vigilant, is probably not going to need the cannon because it already has access to a lot of long range capabilities already. But that's the idea of the rigs. Obviously the aid rig, you've seen me use a few times already. This, when it comes off cooldown, allows you to set a small healing puddle, healing zone for you and your allies. It heals a little bit, not as much as the support classes, but it can help, especially if your support class is being a little bit lax or lazy in their healing. You press triangle, bring up a little bit of a firing arc, press R2 to fire it off, and then when you're inside it, you obviously get to your healing bonuses. Okie dokie. And it can be done at ranged as well, so you don't actually have to, you know, you can. So yeah, anyway, that is the aid rig. Let's move on to the next one, which is the catapult rig, which basically is the ability to give. This rig gives every class the ability to double jump. Basically, you jump, then press triangle, and it allows you to jump through the air again. So when it comes off cooldown, like so. And it instantly speeds you up to maximum speed as well. Jesus Christ, Alexa. What the? You can use it whilst grounded as well. But it will just catapult you forward in the direction you're pressing. So it can be used to get you out of danger quickly. Anyway, next up is the shield rig. This basically gives you a small version of the shield that characters like the Roadblock has. So, set up a shield, prevents enemies from moving through it, and you can shoot through it. Obviously, normal. Doesn't last too long, but it's like a way to block maybe a big incoming enemy attack, or if you're playing PvP, you could use it to maybe dampen the effects of an enemy overdrive attack. So anyway, that's what the shield does. You don't have access to the blade, which is a shuriken, or is it shuriken or chakram? Shuriken, yeah. That allows you to, when it's off cooldown, throw it out at quite a distance, and it paralyzes enemies it touches. So we're ready. And so as you can see, it paralyzed the second enemy there, and I accidentally changed my gun. So it's a nice little crowd controlling move. You can almost see these as akin to Palico gadgets to some respect. Anyway, you then finally have access to the Drill Fist, which, to be honest, I'm going to go up against the stationary monster target dummy for this, because this is a better way of demonstrating it, which is basically it's kind of a supplement for characters who really lack in melee. It basically allows you to punch someone with the Drill Fist, and even if you hold the ability, it will kind of drill into them before knocking them back, like so. So it's a kind of, I suppose, for characters who lack or need a keep away, this could be one to consider. But the thing is, with the rigs, you have to, when you're going through the game for the first time, these three, the shield, the shuriken, well, blade, and the drill fist, they're not, you have to unlock them by just leveling up. They're not available to you straight away from the get-go, which is, you know, fair enough. But yeah, there we have it. Those are all the exosuits in the game. Hopefully you'll find one that you enjoy. There are going to be a lot more added to the game as well, so that is something to look forward to. But yeah, anyway guys, yeah, I'm gonna peace out. Hopefully you've enjoyed this little informative overview of all the exoskeletons as well as the rigs in the game. Like I said, hope that you find one that you like. Yeah, let me know in the comments below, and until next time, I've been Darcblade, bringing you a dino hunting guide to Exoprimal. Hope you enjoyed the video. Thanks for watching, subscribe and like for more.